What was Hollywood like at the time?
Hollywood. Want to hear about my first night in Hollywood?
I'd love to hear about it.
It's amazing. I dropped my wife and child off at a lower Sunset Boulevard at a very inexpensive motel. Went out, it was a Saturday evening, went out to get the Sunday morning paper early to look for a place to live. And there seemed to be something that we could afford. Anyway, I drove to this place. I mean, I didn't get a place to live, but I passed a guy sweeping up in front of a house that had a marquee sign that said, "Opening tonight, Shaw's Major Barbara." My heart turned over. Major Barbara happened to be everything in the world to me. I talked to the guy who was sweeping up. He said, "Yeah, you can come in." And it was like 75, 80 seats. In front of me, there were 3 chairs that were taped off. And as the lights went down in this little place, 3 people walked in. 2 of them were English actors I recognized. The third one, I had noticed in the cast list, there was a Sidney Chaplin. I figured, oh, Sidney Chaplin. It turned out to be the son of Charlie, because Charlie came in. He was the 3rd Britisher. When the show was over, and it was terrific, nobody moved if Mr. Chaplin was still in the place. He thanked the cast who came out. There was no backstage, and sat on the floor in front of him. He could never say thank you without wishing, when he felt it enough, without wishing to do something in return. So he said, there was a wall 10 feet away. He said, "There's a mailbox over there. I have a letter I have to mail in a high wind." So he suddenly became a little tramp, and he's trying to get to that mailbox against a high wind. So my first hours in LA, I'm watching Charles Chaplin do a shtick for me.
I wear the pants in this family. And when you zip them up, include your mouth.
How did you get started writing in television?
I wanted to be a press agent, but I had a cousin who had come out here with her. She was newly married, and she'd come out with her husband who wanted to be a comedy writer. His name was Ed Simmons. My wife and my cousin became good friends. They saw a lot of each other. The 2 guys, saw a lot of each other. And one evening, the women went to, for a dime, I think, went to see a movie. Ed said he had an idea for something he wanted to write, and we wrote it. I helped him. We wrote it that night. The girls came home around 10:30, and I said, let's go out and see if we can sell it. There are clubs around there, and there were in those days a lot of clubs. There was one near us, as a matter of fact. We went to it, called the Bar of Music, and sold the piece for $40 within 20 minutes. So we started to write together. Got a little office, $6 a month, and we sold door to door during the day and wrote in the evenings. Our big break was, I read one day in Variety, Danny Thomas's agent at William Morris. I called in the lunch hour, hoping he would be out. I would get the secretary, and I did get the secretary. And I said, "My name is Merle Robinson." I use the name Merle Robinson always. I just spent 2 days with Danny Thomas. I'm getting on a plane. I have 3 questions asked. I'm going to write the piece on the plane and send it in when I get there. Anyway, she gave me his number. When he heard on the phone how I got the number, he said, "All right, tell me what you want." I said, "I want to tell you a funny piece for you. It has to be short." I said, "Well, 5 minutes, okay?" He says, "Get your ass over here right away." I said, "Well, let's see you around 4 o'clock or something." "I'm in Beverly Hills. You said you were in Hollywood. Why is it going to take you?" I hadn't written that stuff yet. Anyway, wrote it, got it to him. He did it that night. When he was finished, somebody, an agent, said, "Where that piece?" He said, he gave him the name and a number. The guy called in the morning and said, "Can you be in New York in 3 days? We're doing the Jack Haley Ford Star Review on television." 3 days later, we were in New York. Called my father when we landed at LaGuardia. There was no Kennedy. He said, "You sound close, you don't sound long distance." I said, "We're in New York, now we're not in California." "What are you doing in New York?" "Dad, I'm making $350 a week." And my dad, who never made 100, said, "When you make 1,000, that's a lot of money."
Now I suppose you're gonna tell me that the black man has had the same opportunity in this country as you?
More. He's had more. I didn't have no million people out there marching and protesting to get me my job.
No, his uncle got it for him.
Where'd the idea for All in the Family come from?
Bud Yorkin was my partner. Bud was a big star. He had just done the Fred Astaire special. It was a huge success. In that period, Peg suggested we team up. We had been close friends for 2 years before that. He directed a film that he shot in London. He called me one day. He said, "God, I just saw a show." And he told me about a show called "Till Death Us Do Part" with a bigoted father and so forth. And I said, that would be great. And Bud said, "No, you couldn't do that in America." And I did.
How about a woman president?
Oh, holy cow.
A woman president?
Mr. Jefferson, this may come as a big surprise to you, but women are much more oppressed than blacks.
I don't see no ghetto for women.
What do you call a kitchen?
It was the #1 show on TV for 5 years. Why do you think it resonated with people so much?
Well, for some reason, people doing situation comedy, and they never did the human problems families were living with. And so when we did that on All in the Family, you could find the situation next door or across the street, but nobody had dealt with those problems before.
Daddy, do you have to treat Ma like she was a slave?
I treat her like a housewife.
Case closed.
You guys were dealing with a lot of social issues. Did you get pushback from the network often?
A lot of pushback from the network, but we stood our ground. You know, there were people at the network who, in program practices, which was the euphemism for censor, and, we worked together to get what he hoped we could get on the air also.
You did Sandford and Son and Jeffersons and Good Times and What's Happening. How were those shows in particular different from the way that African Americans were being shown on TV at that time?
It was the same situation we faced with All in the Family. While there were lots of white actors on television, they weren't dealing with the problems that, life faced us with.
So she don't dig me, huh, little girl? I'll have you know she just invited me, Brother JJ, to the 10th annual South Shore Debutante Ball.
And the same thing when we started to do the African American families, what had been done previously didn't reflect the same kind of situations in the home. So it's the same fight again.
What happened is that I've been getting in some big freezers and stoves and stuff, and I ran out of room over in my place. So, if you wouldn't mind, I'd just like to leave it here for a little while, and I would appreciate it mucho.
I don't want it here, and I want you to get it out, though.
Sanford and Son was also a UK show that
Yes.
you brought over. How did you have the idea to take this British thing and set it in Los Angeles?
Well, Bud and I were in Las Vegas and fell in love with Red Fox. I remember so clearly. We just thought he was hysterical and thought, oh my God, he's a television star. He's a television star. Can we rid him of the foul mouth for a half hour a week? I mean, can we do that? We came back to LA in that mood, thinking that and so forth. And a couple of weeks later, bless our good luck, her name was Beryl Virtue. She was the British agent who had Till Death Us Do Part that became All in the Family eventually. And she also had the British antecedent, and it was called
Steptoe
and Son, and we called it Sandford.
Tons of successful people have smoked weed. Barack Obama, Steve Jobs, Oprah.
Unemployed, dead, and Gail just said that to get ratings.
More recently, the reboot of One Day at a Time. How long had you been thinking about bringing that show back with the Latino family?
We had the deal here at Sony. My partner Brent Miller, he got a phone call. Would Norman be interested in One Day at a Time, a reboot? Having known Rita Moreno for more than half my life, I thought, holy, this would be great. We put it together and did it.
Netflix had canceled the show, and there was a very sort of public campaign to keep it alive, and it took a couple months.
That was interesting. Netflix canceled the show, and the American public picked it up. I was so amazed and shocked, because I hadn't seen this before, that people wrote and columns were printed and reports were made, and they made the press about how upset a section of the American audience was. And so it was picked up.
Ever since I was a little boy, I would always beg my mother for a little brother. But you know, we was broke. So all is live. Everyone sitting at home just think their TV just messed up.
And you mentioned before the live in front of a studio audience. How did you select the episodes that would be remade, and then what was it like for you to see those scripts come back to life?
I know, it pretty much Jimmy Kimmel and Brent Miller who's made those selections. And I, of course, there was nothing to fight about it. I agreed totally. They were brilliant selections. And we ultimately did All in the Family and the Jeffersons. But the All in the Family was, I don't know, the seventh show or something that we had done. It was the original script, word for word, cast with today's actors. So my long-winded answer to your question is, nothing's changed in human nature, and the problems we dealt with then are the problems we're still dealing with.
And what did it feel like for you to get to watch those get made again?
3 days before we taped those two episodes, I saw that being finished, but for the first time. And just seeing the empty set brought a tear to my eye. To see those glorious actors in those roles in a play I recognized every word of was a great thrill.